Welcome to Life Mosaic, where we explore the living legacy that connects generations for a lifetime and beyond. Here, life is all inclusive, embracing every moment and memory that shapes who we are. We're not just sharing people's stories, we are celebrating the timeless bond that weaves our lives together, transcending time and space. Join us as we uncover the beautiful mosaic of life.
Wheezy, I got a question for you. What is the first thing you think about when I say Sweden?
Instantly in my head, I see the setting of a hot sauna. Sitting in one of those hot saunas because Sweden is known for those. But then they do something I think is crazy. Then they go and either plunge themselves into a pool of cold water of some sort or into a cold shower. And I'm thinking, no. I like the sauna part, the warm part, not
Yeah.
so much the cold part. But I have to say, alternating hot and cold is very good for you. It does help. And then I also think of the fjords and the snow-capped Alps. I see sweaters and I see reindeer. So it's kind of like, I guess when I think of Sweden, I kind of think like Christmas scenes or something like
Christmassy.
that, winter scenes,
Yeah.
which, is lovely if you like, it's all lovely if you enjoy the colder climates.
Well, I thought of the furniture store IKEA and the Swedish meatballs. Maybe I
Swedish
was
meatball Joe. Yeah.
maybe I was hungry and wanting to buy some furniture. I don't know. But we don't have an IKEA here in Savannah, but I remember there, and there may be more since I left, but I remember there is one in Charlotte near where you live. So, Wheezy, have you ever shopped at an IKEA?
Oh, first, before I talk about the shopping experience, you're making me hungry. I love Swedish meatballs. So yes, I have shopped there. And their Swedish meatballs are really good. In fact, one of my favorite purchases from IKEA is a pot that I got from there, which would, be perfect to make Swedish meatballs in. So there we go. And then and then I'm thinking you've got all these images going through my head with these Swedish meatballs, which are bad. So now I'm like serving those Swedish meatballs up with some egg noodles and a good veggie side, But
Oh,
now
me.
that I have my appetite all wetted, I'm ready to go shopping. And so shopping at IKEA is an interesting experience. Um, you definitely need to plan for a few hours for the experience. So, but you can find lots of neat things there, and it's just different. I've always enjoyed going to IKEA, but yes, we have one. I think we only have one around here, and it's up the north part of the city.
Yeah, and I think I remember when it was getting built because it was in the news that Charlotte was getting an IKEA. But I didn't realize this. I was looking it up. I knew they were Swedish, and I knew they were a kitchen and household kitchen appliance kind of store. But I didn't realize, number one, they started in all the way back in 1943. And since 2008, which is many years, they have been known as the world's largest furniture reseller. So kudos to IKEA. I never would have, if I think of furniture stores, I don't think IKEA would be the one I would think that would be the most, but it's internationally. So I think they're pretty
Yeah,
big
yeah, it
worldwide.
is. It's international. I've never bought in. I will say I've never bought any of their furniture, but I've definitely bought things for the kitchen and decor and accessories there. And I've enjoyed what I have purchased there. I bought that pot probably 15 years ago.
Also, when I'm thinking about Sweden, I think of the Vikings, the seafaring Norse people from Scandinavia, which is present day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. They were around the 8th to the early 11th century, known for their explorations, their trade, their raids across Europe, and their advanced shipbuilding and navigational skills. The Vikings established settlements in various parts of Europe, including the British Isles, Iceland, Greenland, and briefly North America. Their culture, mythology, and warrior ethos have left a lasting impact on history and popular culture.
Yes, they have. I mean, you think about the Vikings and their hats and the horns on their hats, which brings us right up to our meme of the week. Rich, I love the meme you found for this. It shows 2 cats, dressed as Vikings, and the caption says, "Vikings use the gift of their new brides with kittens as an essential part of setting up the new household, since cats were essential with a Frisia, goddess of love." Is that how you
Frisia.
pronounce it? Fija?
Sounds good to me.
Fija. So anyway, so the picture shows these 2 cats dressed up with little Viking helmets on, and they have little, different types of battle axes with them. So, which you can see if you check out our show notes. We always put our meme of the week on our show notes on our website.
So then we see the Vikings used to give their new brides a kitten. So I guess when you got married, did your husband give you a nice kitten for a wedding present?
Rich, no kitties, no kitties for our wedding presents. We've always had dogs. Although Zoe, the latest addition to our home, she's about the size of a little kitty.
I think if it worked the opposite way, I might have a wife if she would bribe me with a kitty. Then I might have had somebody by now. But I'm
Uh,
glad that he did not give you a kitty on your for your wedding present because your husband would have been in the doghouse on day one.
I like cats, but I'm just more of a I like a lot of animals, but dogs are my number 1.
So y'all may be wondering why we're talking about Sweden, IKEA, and Vikings today. It's because we have our first international guest on Life Mosaic, a friend of mine that I have met on a internet radio based app. Her name is Sharon, and Sharon describes herself on Instagram as American by birth, Swedish by choice, but mostly a news junkie living and working among the Vikings.
Describes herself on Instagram as American by birth, Swedish by choice. Sharon Bowker, welcome to Life Mosaic.
Well, thank you so much, Wheezy. It's terrific to be here and terrific to be doing a little project with my buddy Rich.
I know, Sharon, I'm so glad you're here. We have been good friends, and we'll get into exactly how we met. But
Sure.
wonderful to have you here from the wonderful country of Sweden. You're our first
Right.
international guest.
Woohoo!
Wow, I feel honored.
We
So,
need to have a little sound effect here with confetti going.
So we're going to do a little biographical information first and just get to know you a little more, let our listeners get to know you. And probably you'll probably tell me some things that I don't already know. But first of all,
Probably.
as your Instagram did say, you are American by birth. So tell us a little bit about where were you born and your childhood memories, that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, I was born in Warren, Ohio. So I'm a Midwestern gal by birth. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. There were 3 girls in a row, boom, boom, boom. And then my brother came along toward the end. And I had a really I always had playmates. I always had companions because my sisters were we were all pretty close in age. I'm literally 15 months older than the next sister and then 3 years older than the one after that. So but it was in northeastern Ohio, Warren, Ohio to be specific. And I was there till I was about 5 years old. And then my father's job took us to Detroit, Michigan, and that's actually where my brother was born. And he likes to claim the Motor City as his place of birth. So I spent a good portion of my childhood, from about 4 or 5 until I was 9 or 10 in Detroit, Michigan, and then from there we went a little bit south to Lafayette, Indiana, and I was in Lafayette, Indiana, all the way up through high school. Went to college at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, majoring in what they called at the time telecommunications. So my growing up pretty much happened right there in the landlocked Midwest of
Yeah.
Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana.
My father's brother was in Michigan, Detroit for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
their mom, my grandmother, she lived in Michigan near my dad's brother, and it was right about the time my dad got out of Vietnam, and
Oh,
he remembered getting back over there, and that was going to be his first stop. He was still we were all from Western North Carolina, but he
mm-hmm.
wanted to see his mom, and he said it was so cold, it was snowing. He said he went to somewhere, I don't know, some kind of a store, and got a jacket or something because he still just had his army clothes on,
Yep.
and he knocks on the door. My grandmother was a funny little lady, and I think it was kind of late at night, so he may have kind of disturbed her a little bit, and she didn't know. And he gets knocking on the door, Ma, 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 open the door. He's freezing to death out there, and she goes, "Who is it?" And he goes, "Richard." And she goes, "Richard who?" And he goes, "Richard, your son. Would you let me in? I'm freezing to death."
Oh my.
So that's what I
Oh,
think of when I think of Detroit. I always think of Dad's story about that. Oh my goodness. He said it wasn't really funny at the time to him. He's standing there at his mother's doorstep freezing to death, but
Right.
it's a
Right.
funny story. So, yeah, so you were in Detroit kind of in your
Mhm.
childhood. Is that where you
Yeah.
went to school and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's where I started school. I did like kindergarten through the fourth grade in the Detroit public school system, and then sometime toward the spring of that year of the fourth grade, we moved down to Lafayette, Indiana, and that was a little bit of a culture shock. And I don't want to say maybe culture shock is not the right word, but that was really one of the very real challenges I kind of remember facing as a kid because I had always been a top student at
Yeah.
school. I was always at the top of the class. I always was at the led the curve. I was a bright kid at the top of my class. But I changed schools the end of fourth grade, and I got down to the school system in Lafayette, Indiana, and I was behind in math. And it was a real shock to me that I was all of a sudden being recommended to go to summer school for math, And when you're, 10 years old and you're used to having always kind of been at the top of your class, and all of a sudden you got to go to summer school, that was a huge blow to me at that
Yeah.
time. And what's really odd is, I mean, and I did the summer school, and I did fine with it. Kind of ruined that summer, of course. But I had a math phobia. I still have it. I've had a math phobia ever since. Even though I did really great in algebra, I did really great in geometry, got all the way through high school, did very, very well on the standardized tests, like the SAT.
Yeah.
My math score was equal to my language score. So it was silly that I had this, I was still math phobic, even just dating back to, summer school between fourth and fifth grade. Ugh,
this shows you, those things that happen to us in childhood can impact us all the way through life.
they stick with you, man. They really, 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 really do. And like I said, to this day, I will tell you, oh God, math. No, I mean, I stopped taking, nah, no math for me. Fractions. What? Um,
You're speaking my language.
I
thank
can
you.
I
I'm
can
so
I
glad I'm
cannot
not alone.
I can't do math. I cannot
I
do
can
math.
do math, but I don't like math.
You didn't
I
enjoy
blame
it.
the fundamentalist Baptists that were teaching me at the time. They didn't they were worried about my soul, not my math scores.
Ah, I see. Well, that was my first kind of real kind of setback. I mean, what is your job as a kid? It's to go to school and get good grades and,
Yeah.
play and grow up healthy. And that was my first kind of fail, and not only did I feel like I failed me, I kind of failed my parents. Although they were cool with it. I mean, it just was stunning to me that I could have been considered to be such a good student when I left the Detroit public schools, and all of a sudden I was going to summer school for math. But we turned that around pretty fast, and I did okay. all the rest of the way through school. But when they told me I was done taking math, I did not take any more math. That's for
Don't
sure.
blame me. We only needed, Weezy, was it the same with you? Did you only need like the lowest level math class to get through the teleproduction course?
Yes, and it was algebra. No, I had to take algebra.
Oh, we only
And
had to take, it was like the lowest, it was like the lowest math that the college had to offer.
no,
Wow. I did.
I had to take algebra and it pulled my GPA down. We'll just say that because
Oh, wow.
me and algebra do not get along.
Miraculously, I did not have to take any math in college.
Oh,
And
wow.
again, and this was a long, long time ago, guys. I'm sure the rules have changed since then. So I did algebra in high school. I did geometry in high school, and I did not do any math at all in college. And I don't really regret that because I didn't have the experience that Wheezy did in terms of having her grade point average impacted, which probably would have happened to me. But the moment they told me I didn't have to take it anymore, I stopped.
Weezy and I both went to a community college there near where we live
Hmm.
when I lived in the Charlotte area at the time. And the students, for the most part, were very disrespectful to the math student or the math teacher. They were very disrespectful to him. And he
Oh,
was a really nice Asian guy. And,
Oh,
you know, he did have a little bit of an Asian accent, but I really thought that was just a lot of disrespect. So I went. I was just doing terrible in the class, and I'm like, "This is I'm for the first time in my life, I'm going to fail a class." So I made an
mhm.
appointment to speak with him, and went to his office, and I was telling him, I'm like, you know, I try, and everything, and my grades are just not good. He's like, and I can't do his accent, but he was like, listen, he said, you come to the class, you try to do your best, you don't interrupt me, you're not disrespectful. He said, when I get a student like you, if your grade needs a little bit of help from me, I will help you. He said, but
Aw.
the ones that are
You,
coming in there and disrespecting me, if they need some help with their grades, they're not getting it.
mm,
So
yep.
I did. We made a deal. He said, if you will do every answer on every test, whether it's right or wrong, you will find that you're going to have a good grade. And I got my math grade that semester, and it was a B, and I deserved an F.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
that's
That's
awesome.
good. Well, that shows you how you should never burn bridges, and
No,
you should never be mean just for the sake of being mean. It'll come back,
yeah.
it's yeah. You did well there, Rich.
Yeah, I'm glad I did with that, but yeah, I couldn't go to family either with help for it because all of my family's bad at math. Even though my dad almost had a master's in business and worked for the largest fast food chain for 40 plus years. So
Oh.
for some reason, though, he couldn't. He could help him sell burgers, but he couldn't probably run the cash register. I don't
Oh,
know.
well, I put my husband to shame because he tried to tutor me in the algebra. He's an engineer,
Ah.
and civil trained at that, and
Oh
so
my
he's
goodness.
trying to you know break it down for me and everything, and I'm just looking at him. I'm going, you might as well just be talking a foreign language because I don't understand anything you're saying.
I
I
get
So
got
it.
I did a fit. So I had the instruction at home, but still didn't compute.
Mm.
what what made you decide? What was it that made you decide to move to Sweden?
Well, while I was at university, I actually studied abroad, which was probably the best and most valuable part of my college education, I think. And I always encourage people, if you've got a chance to study abroad as part of your university experience, take it, do it. Um, and while I spent a term abroad, actually in the UK in London, I kind of decided right there and then I'd really like to spend at least part of my adult life, part of my professional career abroad, if I could pull that off. Of course, I kind of always imagined it would be a country where English was the native language. So Sweden was not on my radar at all. The UK, Ireland, Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, something like that. But when I was in the late 1990s, I got when the internet was young. I don't know if you guys are hopefully are old enough to remember when the internet was actually young.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I think I'm much closer to your age than you would believe, think.
Okay. Well, I haven't really revealed that yet, but it was a long time ago. And I was at that point I was working as a communications officer for a large university, Purdue University, actually in West Lafayette, Indiana. Go Boilers! And I had joined a group based on my experience studying abroad in London. I was a bit of an Anglophile. I always loved the UK. I loved its history. I learned a lot about its history. I'd visited many of those places, and I loved the sense of humor and particularly British comedy. So what I had done was I had joined an online community. Basically, it was a mailing list at this point in time, of people who also shared this passion and this love of British comedy. And in the course of being on that mailing list, which had people from all over the world on it, this whole bunch of people from all over the world is together in London. We all know each other from the mailing list. We don't know each other in person, but we all get together, and we had a long weekend together. And in addition to the show that we all went to see Dawn and Jennifer perform, we ended up doing some things together. We had some meals together. We saw some sights together. We just kind of all hung out together. And that's where I met my Swede. And as a kind of a casual thing, at the end of this long 4-day weekend that we were all together, I issued kind of this blanket invitation to the entire group. And there were probably 20 of us. And I said, hey, guys, I know I don't live in the most exciting part of the United States, but if you're ever in Indiana, I've got an extra room. You've got a free place to stay. Never really imagining that any of the internationals would take me up on that. But the Swede did. And she turned around and came to the United States the following Easter. This was in November, actually, that we were all in London together. And she came around and she came back to the United States, came to visit me in the United States for Easter. She'd never been before. She had a free place to stay. And it was kind of during that trip that I realized, maybe there's something going on here. I wasn't quite sure that there was, but we just sort of kept in touch from there, corresponded more personally. She invited me to come to Sweden for summer vacation. So that summer, I went to Sweden for the first time and spent my summer vacation there. That was in the end of August of 2001. And well, you all know what happened on September 11th of 2001.
Oh, yeah.
I had just gotten off a plane several days before and had a wonderful time. Really knew I had something special with this young Swedish scientist. And those towers came down. And I was like, talk about a moment that helps you line up your priorities really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, we've got to try this. I mean, even as crazy as it sounded, this American working for this university in the United States, her finishing up a PhD in molecular medicine in Sweden, we had to give it a go. And so that's when I ended up pulling the trigger, actually applying for the residency permit, going through all the interviews and things, knowing that it was going to take a little while for that to be approved, or, for all that to be taken care of. This was in the fall, obviously, October of 2001. And by the spring of 2002, I had the permit. And by June of 2002, I was living here. So that's sort of how that evolved. I met the right person, wasn't looking for the right person, didn't know she was the right person. And then circumstances just sort of I don't want to say forced my hand, but I really felt I needed to take that leap and give it a try, that I might regret it if I didn't, I would regret what I didn't do, what I didn't try. And that's how I ended up in Sweden. It's kind of a long story short, but it's a little bit different than most stories, I think.
Well, that's interesting, because it just went from from the mailing list you were on with folks that like British comedy, and
Yes.
then y'all meet and ends up you following her to Sweden.
Yes, remarkable. And so we are technically, an early successful internet romance, I guess you could say, even though there was no romance happening when we first started communicating with each other. But we technically did meet online, but we met online as part of a community of people that shared a common interest. And I think that makes a big difference when you're making any kind of connection, really.
Well, that is so interesting, Sharon. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you
Mhm.
do it so colorfully.
Oh,
Um, so, so you've been in Sweden for quite a while now.
yeah, yes.
Is there something from the US that, that you miss? Certain foods or stores or venues?
Ah,
The
wow.
differences that, you might miss?
How much time do you have? um,
Oh.
um, of course, I miss my family immensely. That was probably the most difficult thing to step away from because I was my sisters were both married and had kids. So I had nieces and nephews that I was just adored and was really close to and loved spending time with and watched growing up. Um, and I had a large network of friends. I had this career. I mean, all stepping away from all of that was really, really hard. But as I said, when I decided to pull the trigger on making this move, it was a risk I felt like I had to take. And I didn't burn any bridges either. I mean, my employer, I was working for Purdue University at the time. They were like, I know, there's a job here for you if and when you need to come back. I still had my network, but I had to give it a try. And I'm really, really glad I did, but it wasn't easy, especially considering how little Swedish I actually spoke when I got over here. I mean, very little Swedish when I got over here. But the things that I miss from the United States, besides my family, there are certain foods. There are certain fast foods. I mean, I would kill for a Taco Bell here in Malmo, honestly.
The Taco Bell.
Yeah. Oh,
Run for the border.
I'd take a run for the border at any opportunity. Instead of the border of Denmark, I would be running for the border for Taco Bell. We do have some American fast food here. There's McDonald's, there's Burger King, Subway, but no Taco Bell, darn it. So I do miss that. I miss the the ability to go out and shop 24 hours. I miss the big box stores that are and the grocery stores that are open 24 hours a day. Nothing like that exists here, really. Um, I miss customer service. There is just and honestly, Swedes and many European people actually almost find the American level of customer service and attentiveness almost a little bit off-putting. They feel a little bit threatened by it. They feel a little bit pressured by it. But I miss not having someone come up to me in a store and say, "Can I help you find something?" I mean, because that just does not happen here. It's just there's just not, and it's not that people are rude. There's just not that
Yeah.
expectation kind of built into society or built into that transaction that they're going to go out of their way to help you. And I think that's why for Europeans, is particularly for Swedes, when they come to the United States and a salesperson is on them like on them immediately, they feel like they're under some kind of pressure to buy. I'm like, no, no, no. They just want to be helpful.
Yeah.
I miss that level of customer service for sure, I would say.
That's interesting. I did not, because I mean, I'm an East Coast girl, so I
Uh-huh.
have everything, just based on here. I've never regretted not regrettably, there's
Mm-hmm.
still much time, but I have not traveled abroad, and
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize that it was like that over there. So that's an interesting point. I would be
Mm-hmm.
very off-putting to them because
Yeah.
I like to make everybody feel so comfortable. I'm a northerner that transferred into the South, and I
Yes.
would say I ooze with hospitality.
Right.
Oh
I
yeah.
want to make
Right.
you comfortable. What do you like? What are your dislikes?
I was going to say the fun thing about the South too is they to me they even go overboard, and I don't know how many times, and maybe it's just because of how good looking I am, but the waitress calls me
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah, right, Wheezy. The waitress calls me sweetie, or honey, do you want
Yeah.
some more tea,
Honey.
or
Hmm.
something like that, and I think yeah, so they might get the Swedes may get a little nervous of people calling them honey and sweetie.
Yeah, that level of familiarity would certainly make most Swedes a little bit uncomfortable, at least ones that hadn't experienced it before. I mean, this always cracks me up. Whenever, like when I'm in a grocery store or any retail establishment in the United States, if I have to pass by someone and I know I'm going to even step into their field of vision, because they're looking at something and I need to squeeze by them or whatever, I will say, excuse me,
Yeah,
because not that and my Swede thinks that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Why? You're not in their way. You didn't bump them. You didn't ask them to move. I said, I know, but I'm kind of coming into their personal space, and I might possibly be interrupt them from whatever it is they're doing. So I say, excuse me. She thinks that's crazy. She makes fun of me for it all the time.
Well, I can say I'm just going to pop up and say, our cultures have been changing a lot, and particularly since 2020, and we know what grand event that was.
Yeah, sadly.
A lot of people, that is unfortunately something that's going by the wayside here too.
I have understood that level of social civility is sometimes lacking in some places and some spaces. I understand that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but it is, but I'm like you. It's the way I was born. It
Uh
is in
huh.
my DNA.
Yeah.
And when I'm going to pass somebody, I'm going to say, "Excuse me."
Yes. Yeah. Excuse me, just in case I've disturbed
yeah.
you.
Yes. Yes.
Social interaction among strangers. I mean, Swedes, there's a running joke over here that if you're walking down the street and you pass someone and they make eye contact with you or smile or even say hello, they're either drunk or they're an American.
I'd be that American.
And I'm still that American. I am, 20 years on, I am still that American because it's just, they don't have this. That's just not a social convention that really exists here. And people tend to interpret that as Swedes being very cold or disinterested in other people. And
Mhm.
that's not the case at all. It's just not part of the social convention
We
here.
were raised one way in our culture, and that's just a cultural thing with them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Very cool. Rich, talking to Sharon about music, and then, we've been talking about Sweden and everything. It just puts me back to, in the very beginning, I was saying that I think of sweaters with Sweden because I love the knit sweaters from there. But another one of my favorite sweaters, and it is the name of a 90s group, is the Cardigans. And, is that something that are you familiar with them? Is it something you might play on your 90s vibe show?
Oh yeah, I've played the Cardigans on every show I've ever had. I absolutely love them. Swedish indie rock and pop band that were big, successful, both there and internationally and in America, and especially their big hit "Loveful," one of my favorite songs. So yes, I absolutely love the Cardigans, and songs like that, artists like that, you can hear on my WRUU shows. If you're most likely not in Savannah, where you can get 107.5, you can listen to all of our shows at WRUU.org. My show 90s Vibes would be where I would play the Cardigans. That airs on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. So, yeah, thank you, Wheezy, for letting me talk about my shows there on WRUU. Let's talk about some of what you do. You're really good at trying to help people tell their life story and leave a living legacy for their families and the generations to come after them.
Yeah, Rich, like our guest today, and this is how I like to work with people is we all go through different things in our life, different situations, moving situations that change our life. We find things that make us passionate and your future family would never know what you did or the reasons you were doing it if we don't share it. So at Living Legacy with Wheezy, that is what I do. I help people share their stories in interesting ways to pass on to the future generations by using video. And I do this by guiding you through the video experience right here by using Zoom. And if you want more information about that, just go check out my website at livinglegacywithweezy.com. And if you don't know how to spell that, just check it out in our show notes. It's always listed there on our show notes page on our website of lifemosaic.me.
And we can also be found on social media. Wheezy, I am on Facebook and Instagram at Rich on the Air, all one word, Rich on the Air. And tell folks how they can find you on social media.
Well, my handle to find me on on three platforms is LLW Wheezy, Weezy, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or as now known as X.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Life Mosaic today. This is part 1 of Sharon's interview. Next time you'll hear how Sharon and Rich met, their love for radio, and Sharon will get a little personal, telling us about a health situation that happened to her as well. That's next time on Life Mosaic. We're available anywhere you find podcasts or at lifemosaic.me.